Did you guys hear that?
Yeah, I heard it too, man. Yeah, I think it came from here.
Shit, what are we gonna do? What are we even supposed to do now?
I don't know, man. I don't know, man.
Shit, they got him. Oh my god, I wanna get out. I wanna get out of here. I wanna get out of here. The Vietnam War was pure hell, but it was also one of the most important conflicts of the Cold War. So let's explain Vietnam, block by block, through Minecraft. After World War II, the war was split between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. They never fought each other directly, but their rivalry spilled into smaller nations, nations that became pawns in a global chess match, and Vietnam was about to become one of the most dangerous squares on that board. But this war didn't start overnight. To understand why it erupted, we need to go back to the beginning, to a time before the first shot was even fired. For decades, Vietnam was under French control. The Vietnamese lived under foreign rule, their resources stripped away, their culture suppressed. But after World War II, the tide was turning. Colonies across Africa and Asia were breaking free from their colonial chains, and Vietnam was no exception. The independence movement was led by Ho Chi Minh, or as we'll call him, Uncle Ho. To some, he was a symbol of freedom, to others a dangerous revolutionary. And the truth is, Uncle Ho wasn't just a nationalist, he was also a communist, and he believed independence could only come through revolution. And that belief won him powerful allies in the Soviet Union and China. But in Washington, they weren't happy. To America, Ho Chi Minh wasn't a liberator, he was the spearhead of communism in Southeast Asia. And in the Cold War, that could only mean one thing: a confrontation was inevitable. The country was divided in two, the communist North and the anti-communist South. On paper, this division was temporary, and elections were promised to unite the nation. But those elections never happened, and each side claimed to be the true Vietnam. Foreign powers king and poured more fuel on the fire, the North backed by the Soviets in China and the South by the United States. Every move from one side triggered a counter move from the other. And by this point, you might be asking, why fight over Vietnam at all? The answer lies in the very spirit of the Cold War. Both superpowers were locked in a struggle to stop the other's influence. For the United States, Vietnam was the first domino in Southeast Asia. If it fell to communism, they believed its neighbors will fall too, and America will face more enemies than it could count. Then, in 1964 came the spark. American ships were mysteriously attacking the Gulf of Tonkin. Whether by design or by misunderstanding, it became the perfect reason to go to war. In 1965, the first American combat troops arrived. Many expected a war of big battles, clear front lines, and a quick victory, and what they found was nothing like that. This was a war fought in thick, humid jungles against an enemy that seemed to vanish into thin air. The Viet Cong struck from shadows, then disappear into underground tunnels stretching for miles. And the ground itself was a weapon, hiding traps that could kill in an instant. For soldiers, Vietnam became a deadly game of hide and seek, except you were always the one being hunted. During the Lunar New Year, when a ceasefire was expected, the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese army launched a massive surprise attack, the Tet Offensive. Cities, military bases, and even the US Embassy in Saigon were hit. For a moment, it felt like nowhere was safe. On the battlefield, American forces fought back and declared victory, but on television the images told a different story, one of chaos, fragility, in a war with no end in sight. Back in the United States, protests swelled. Parents, students, veterans all began to ask the same question: what are we even fighting this war? And while the jungles of Vietnam burned, a new war raged in America. One fought not with bullets but with doubt. Public opinion began to collapse. For the first time, major news channels openly questioned whether victory was possible. Politicians started to talk about peace with honor instead of total victory. And in the jungles of Vietnam, the Viet Cong, though weaker, proved they could strike anywhere, anytime. What followed was a slow retreat. US troops pulled back, but the war dragged on. The policy was called Vietnamization, handing the fight to South Vietnam. On paper, it looked like a strategy, but in reality, it was an exit plan. Jet bombers kept pounding the north, battles flared in the south, and every month, more names were carved into the memorials back home. America was leaving, but Vietnam was still burning. By 1973, a ceasefire was signed. American combat troops came home. For many in the US, the war was over, but in Vietnam, the fighting never stopped. 2 years later, North Vietnamese tanks rolled through the gates of the presidential palace in Saigon. The flag of the South came down. The war that had divided a nation, claimed millions of lives, and haunted a generation was finally over.